Pastor Phil Camden. What a champion from Newcastle. Go for it,
Thanks,
mate.
John. Good morning, everyone. How you going? Excellent. Well, I have been given the chore of talking about strategic systems. And really, it is a passion of mine. It is not something that is out of the ordinary of what we do at Church 180 continually, week after week, month after month, and hopefully year after year for many years to come. But I want to share with you something that we do. All I'm going to share with you is what we do at Church 180. You can glean it, you can chew it up, spit it out, you can digest what you want, say that is totally not where we want to go, but at least it gets you thinking along the lines of, then what are we going to replace that with if it's not that? What type of strategic system are we going to use? And so all I'm going to do is share with you what we do at Church 180. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 16 says, from him, or it says from whom, but in the context it's him, from him the whole body, or the team joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. I want to talk to you about team, your team, my team. I want to talk to you about what that team represents and how that team operates. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, if you're taking notes. If not, email us and we'll send it all to you. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up. Now, we take those scriptures and we say, this is what we want you to be, church. We want you to be a body joined together, encouraging one another, building each other up. But I want to tell you, if it doesn't happen at the level of a leadership team in the environment of who we are as a leadership team, it won't happen on Sunday morning or during the week with your people, because it will flow down as an example to them. And so we as a team, we as leaders, need to be people who encourage one another and build each other up. Listen to what it says in Hebrews 10, verse 24. And let us consider how we can spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Spur one another on. I wonder if that's what we do. I wonder if in your team you're spurring one another on. I think there are different ways and different systems in relationship to how we do leadership that either causes us not to spur one another on. We don't do it by intent. It's not because we're evil senior pastors that we don't want to spur one another on, but the framework of our leadership does not encourage spurring one another on. It does not encourage working together and building each other up. Many pastors do leadership like this. You've seen it before in most leadership books, but we do leadership as a silo. And so we have people reporting to us as a senior pastor. We have the youth pastor coming in and talking to us on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning. How was Friday night? How was Saturday night? Awesome. Awesome. Best night we've ever had. It was awesome. Brilliant. You know, and you're kind of, yeah, now, okay, we'll get rid of all that fluff and froth from the cappuccino machine. Now, what really happened on Friday night? How did the youth connect? Were there any new people there? How did it go? And we begin to talk. But the problem with this is that we talk one-on-one with level leadership. They may be level 4 or 5 leadership. Okay, and you're a 10 leadership sitting there talking to a level 4 and 5. Do you think that that person in that environment is really going to tell you what you need to hear? They're not really going to tell you what you need to hear, because sitting in front of them is a level 10 leader, and they're not about to share with you some of the challenges that they've got, because their level 4 leadership doesn't give them the courage to rise and say what you need them to say, but they're too scared to say it in this silo relationship that you have. And so here we have, pastoral care coming to you. We have different ones coming to you. And what this does, really, I think, if we go back to that slide, what this does is it actually helps the enemy do what he does better. You know what the enemy does? But we had Pastor John Morgan speak in our church last Sunday morning, and he's from Australia, but now pastoring in Chicago in the USA. It was a brilliant message on how the enemy operates. And this is what he said: the enemy comes to divide and conquer. He wants to separate. He goes around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. John said it like this: many of us say the enemy doesn't have teeth, he just gums you to death. But John said, no, hey, you can't devour anyone if you haven't got teeth. And he seeks those who he seeks who he can devour. But you know what a lion does? A lion waits until one of the herd is separated from the rest, and then he attacks. And that's how the enemy moves as well. When we treat people in silos, what we do is we help the enemy do what he does, and that is divide our departments up, divide our leadership team up, live with them as separate entities, and in that separate entity where they only talk to you and nobody else, they are divided and they're conquered. What we've got to do is find a way where we can do what the Bible teaches us to do, and that is to build one another up, to spur one another on. How can you do that in a silo leadership model? How can you spur one another on if all you're doing is talking to the senior pastor and the youth pastor never talks to the kids pastor? The kids pastor never talks to the connect pastor. The pastoral care pastor never talks or communicates to the youth leader. How can you have that type of thing? And you know what? Quite frankly, many pastors love that because they don't want to hear what they need to hear sometimes from a level 4 leader. They don't want to hear that I'm feeling isolated, like last night's message. It's not just about senior pastors. How many of your team are feeling that lonely? And you're in their world. How many youth pastors are feeling disconnected, and yet there's a kids pastor in that same team feeling as disconnected? And they're never coming together and talking about it together. This is how we do it at Church 180. We run it as a matrix kind of leadership team. What we have here, and we're going to try and explain it to you as best as we can in like 13 minutes, but what we do, if we just throw those slides up, we have all the different departments, and each green box represents a leader in that area, and they're volunteers, okay, in the life of our church. Some of you may have them as full-time staff in your church. It may be a full-time paid worship leader or events coordinator or kids leader, youth leader. But many of us in this room, including myself, many of those positions are filled by volunteer people, okay, who work during the week and yet are in their ministry life in our church carrying those portfolios as leaders within the area. Each of those areas has a leadership team member, and each one of those green boxes represents a member who is a part of my leadership team. And I meet with them at our house with Lenore, my wife. We provide a meal every month, and they, with their spouses, come to my house, and we have a meal together. And around that house, we talk about the characteristics of good leaders. In fact, we've taken them through a book called Integrity by Dr. Henry Cloud, who was a speaker over at Bill Hybels' church, and a brilliant book. And we took them through over this year the 12 chapters. In fact, it took us more than a year of Dr. Henry Cloud's book, Integrity. Why? Because my job during that month and during that meeting is to build the leaders. If you don't have leaders, there's only one thing you can do: grow them. And it's no good complaining, I don't have any leaders, I don't have this, I don't have that. Hey, grow them. Get them into your life. Sit with them. Have a coffee. Bring them into your lounge room, into your living room. Talk to them about the characteristics that make a good leader, and begin to build relationship with them. And so all of those people are in my house, in our house every month, and we sit around and we talk about what makes us the team that we need to be. I ask the question, are we the team that is able to grow this church beyond where it is? And the answer is no. Every time the answer is no. Because we're looking to see more and more people come into the kingdom of God, and therefore we need to extend our heart and our circle of love and influence to increase the capacity of our ability to reach into the unchurched and to do the good deeds that spur one another on to love and good deeds. Okay, so every one of those people are on the leadership team. Then as we go through, we have to add, those blue dots represent somebody within that team that is also connected to that leader on the leadership team, okay? So in fact, if you look at the worship team and you go down that line there, there's a representative of the worship team on events, on kids, on youth. So that worship leader is responsible for worship in our kids. That worship leader is responsible for worship in our kids, in our youth ministry. Because what happens is our youth ministry begins to grow. Then our youth pastor, who was in high schools and primary schools, and that's why it started to grow, because our youth pastor was in the high schools, in the primary schools. He was evangelizing. He was sharing the gospel. He was inviting them to church. Then the youth group begins to grow, and now he's focused in his office on, I've got to get the worship team going for Friday night. I've got to get a roster for this. I've got to get stewards and hosts and all of that kind of stuff. So now he becomes an admin person rather than an evangelist in our high schools and our primary schools. And now the youth group begins to slow down. Why? Because we've got our youth pastors sitting in the office doing rosters. I've got people who can do rosters better than him. So why don't they become a part of his team? So now if Youth Alive says we want to do Youth Alive in your church, Phil, I don't put that all on the youth pastor. I go to our hosts who run a great events on a Sunday. Sunday is a brilliant event. We have car parking attendants. We have hosts. We don't say to the youth pastor, well, we've got Youth Alive coming. No, we say to our team, our whole leadership team, we've got Youth Alive coming to our church on a Saturday night or a Friday night. We all own this. It's not just the youth pastor. This is, and we have elderly people, we have more mature people than our youth group on the door of our Youth Alive nights. We have them in our car parks. Why? Because this is about our team winning, not just about our youth pastor winning. We are together in this. And so when the kids ministry wants live worship, we don't say to the kids pastor, hey, we want you to forget about the curriculum of kids and growing kids. We would say to our worship pastor, hey, you know what? Why don't you start developing young people in our kids ministry in praise and worship and do what you do best. Raise up that team. And so you can see everywhere we have a blue dot, there is people represented on that team. Now, this causes some challenges, but as we go through, you can see the yellow dots up there are places that are yet to be filled. And some people will go, well, you know what, I can't do this because I don't have all those positions available. Hey, 4 years ago when I went to Newcastle, we didn't either. Didn't have any of these people. You start with one, then you add another one, then you add another one, then you add another one. That's how you do it. That's how we all do it. That's how things grow. That's how we mature. We just keep adding to what we already have. And so there are areas there we look at and we go, you know what, we don't have pastoral care represented in events, or we don't have someone connecting kids into our youth group. There's no bridge from our kids ministry into our youth, so we need somebody representing youth in our kids ministry. And the only reason they're there on a Sunday morning with our kids is to build relationships, so that then on Friday night when they come into our youth program, they've already got this relationship with someone who's been with them in kids ministry. And so there's this connection all the time with those people. Okay, so as we move through there, you say, well, what does the senior pastor do? Well, whenever you've got a matrix, you have to have a guardian. And the senior pastor is the guardian. Because what happens here, remember that level 4 or 5 leader that wouldn't tell you what you needed to hear because they didn't have the courage? You put them in the room with another group of 4 and 5 leaders, and I want to tell you, they start telling you things that they never thought they had the courage to tell you to your face. But they rise, their wisdom, level 4 and 5 leaders may not rise in their wisdom in this environment, but they do rise in their courage. They begin to say things like they're level 7 or 8 leaders and going, whoa, but you needed to hear that. You know, you needed to hear it because it creates the environment for discussion and collaboration. It creates the environment for communication. It creates the environment for people to think, how are we going to change this and how are we going to move forward in this? Don't be afraid of hearing things that you need to hear as a leader if it's going to move you forward into the purpose and plan and destiny of God for your life. But you just got to remember, level 4 and 5 leaders will become more courageous in an environment where they're surrounded by other level 4 or 5 leaders. and be ready for that. As a matrix, as the guardian, you have to manage that well and make sure that that courage that has been spoken out doesn't detour you off the vision and the call of God for you as a church. And as a guardian, you keep it on course. You keep the vision true. You keep the culture true. You keep the momentum going forward and moving forward as the guardian of the whole matrix. Here are some of the benefits of the matrix. Number one, widely shared information reduces the concentration of power at the top of the organization. In other words, things keep going when I'm away. Because the team now understands the culture that, hey, if we win on Sunday as a youth pastor, I'm winning. If I win on Friday as a youth pastor, we're all winning. We are winning as a team. And so it spreads the level of power and authority. And so it doesn't slow down the momentum of decisions being made just because I'm in the Congo or in Nigeria or I'm in some other place. On Sunday, I am secure that the team are spurring one another on to good works. That the team are working together as one should. It focuses on the church as a whole rather than on departments or departmentally. In other words, the youth pastor is saying, how is this going to affect Church 180? How is this going to have an impact on us as a whole? Every decision he makes has an outworking in the life of other departments. We're fooling ourselves. Is that not true as a church? You know, as a husband, as a father, everything I do, I cannot say, well, that's my church life and this is my family life. You know that to be true. We don't work for BHP. You can't go around on a Friday night and get drunk and commit adultery and still turn up at work on Sunday. There's something different about what we do, isn't there? There's something different about what we do that says, hey, you know what, we can't live like that and continue to live like that and pretend it's not going to impact on other areas of our life. Everything we do today will have an impact on our life tomorrow. So we've got to continue to work through these and see ways that we can go forward. Focus, or it enables flexibility, sharing of all resources. Nowhere at Church 180 is anyone allowed to say, that's my projector. That's my night. That's our projector. That's our team. That's our church. We work as a team. Provides an avenue for legitimate multiple sources of authority in the organization. Do you know that when we go back to the blue dot, that blue dot person has to realize if they're working in kids ministry, but in kids ministry they're the worship leader. On Sunday morning their boss is the kids leader. On Monday night at worship, the worship pastor is their leader. That's why the kids leader and the worship leader have to be on the same page, speaking the same language, speaking the same spirit, speaking the same culture, speaking the same DNA. Because when that person goes to the worship pastor and says, but what about this? The worship pastor gives them an answer. Then they go to the kids pastor and say, but what do you think about this? The kids pastor gives them the same answer, and we're all on the same page, and we keep the momentum working and moving forward. We're all speaking the same language and moving in the same direction. Provides opportunity for skill development. Provides an avenue for legitimate multiple sources. Oh, sorry, I said that. Victory is collective. The first thing we do around that meal time at our house every month is I say, share with me some of the wins. I love it, you know. Last time we had the meeting was like a week ago, last Tuesday night, and our pastoral care person said, oh, you know, on Sunday night, a girl was down at the chemist and she was getting her, what do you call it, Garth? Methadone for the controlling of her addiction. And as she was in the chemist lining up, she got it, walked past our church, walked past the adult bookshop, and then walked past Church 180, but instead of walking past, she came in, sat up the back, and at the altar call, put up her hand. And whoa, really? She said, yes, she's got saved on Sunday night. She gave her life to Jesus Christ. I'm thinking, wow. And then he says, not only that, we back right onto the Travelodge, a hotel, and a guy was looking at the hotel room, and he saw the people going in, and he said to the staff, hey, what's happening next door? And they said, oh, it's church. So he thought, man, I haven't been to church for years. I might go. Went in, put his hand up and received Christ as his Lord and Savior. Now, I want to tell you, when you're sitting in the lounge room hearing those testimonies, it's like, I love this job. This is awesome. It is just so good to hear the things that are happening. Yeah, we talk about the challenges, but we talk about it in the spirit of how we're going to together work through these challenges. Must be total. Oh, you've seen those up there. I don't need to read those. Let's move on to the next slide. The matrix must. You have to create vision. Here are the musts for you as a matrix. And if you can't get these all down, we will send them to you. Just email info@church180.com and we'll just forward it to you. We won't spend any time on the phone. We'll just forward you the information. So here it is. Create vision. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Some people have changed the word matrix to collaboration, as if they've come up with a brand new idea. Look, the Matrix has been around for years and years and years, and now we call it collaboration so we can sell a few more books and have a few more seminars, but it's all the same stuff. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Carry out vision with shared authority. Create short-term wins. Consolidate and change if you need to change to make the win. Now let me just go to some very practical applications in relationship to all of that. I had my slides in a different formation that was coming up. So the first thing that we do as a leadership team, I have 1 minute. The first thing that we need to do is come up with our yearly calendar. And so we sit down in September and October, all of us together for 2 days at my house. And this is the spouses are included, because I found if you don't bring the spouse on board, then the leadership level of your team leader grows. The spouse doesn't. And the spouse lays in bed on Sunday saying, oh, you give so much to the church. There's so much of your time is given to the church. You know why? Because I, as a senior pastor, haven't brought the spouse along the journey of the leadership development. And I've got to help that. So that spouse is a part of our job as well. Here we have. So we got the big rocks. Colour is a big rock in our calendar. Hillsong is a big rock in our calendar. The men's is a big rock in our calendar. I'm not sure when the state conference is on, so we've got 2 weeks next year, but we'll have that down in my calendar by the end of the conference. But I know the state conference is on, and we've got all of these big rocks that go in there. And so we get that done first. And then we have our strategic plan. The music has started. There is our strategic plan. Vision, to create a church environment of being real, relevant, and relational that brings people to a point of belonging, investing, and growing. We want to see, in 2020 vision is to see 10,000 people come to know Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. How are we going to do that this year? So we sit down and strategically plan that together, and then we hold each other accountable to the strategic plan. Here are the goals. Just throw them up very quickly. This is what I'll send to you. Each one of our departments has goals, actions, and measures, and we sit around and we buy into those all together at the beginning of the year, and we say, yep, we sign off on that. We're going to help each other achieve those goals in each of our areas